going to cover a lot of subjects. First, we're going to discuss the issue of inheritance, meaning a wife, when she inherited the estate of her husband. Is that biblical? Is that rabbinic? Difference between the two, when and where and how she inherited. Another subject that comes indirectly to our discussion is the process of the funeral, levaya. Good morning. Levaya, which means, as you know, when the hearse pull out the coffin, we have the pallbearers that carry the coffin between the hearse to the burial site. You must probably noticed that we stop 7 times. Why are we doing that? It's indirect source from our discussion of today. Another subject of today is a fellow left a Yerusha, an inheritance, a lot of estate, but a lot of debt to a lot of lenders. So the question is how you evaluate that in conjunction to the heirs. Meaning if persons have heirs from, especially from different wives, and he left estate and a lot of debt, how you wrap up the distribution of estate, especially when you're dealing with a lot of movable object, not just a land. The subject that we're going to discuss in the second part of the shiur is the idea that someone passed away, left the state, but there are different creditor, different lending institution, and the question is how you disperse the estate, especially if it's not cover the entire debt. How do you disperse the estate, especially if you have a heir? Meaning if you have children, orphans, that they have attached to the state or they inherited the estate, yet you have debts that the collector come after that, either building or estate, to whom you disperse the estate, especially if it's not covered all day, and who's standing in line in the manner of creditor. So where we are, we're going to study page 84, but we start on page 83, 3 lines from the bottom of the page, 6 lines from the bottom of the page. Rabban Shimon Gamliel telling Mishna, even her husband wrote that I have no claim to your estate during your life, after your passing, so it's not an effective claim. The Yerusha, the inheritance, is biblical. The husband inherits his wife, and therefore, regardless to what he said, Baruch She'amar, whatever he said, it's not count, because whenever you have a disputation between the Torah law and the personal statement, the Torah law superseded. Amar Rav Halacha כרבן שמעון בן גמליאל ולא מטעמי. So he said that this halacha, when a person said to his wife, I have no claim, etc., etc., he inherited, and but not because his line of reasoning. מה הלכה כרבן שמעון בן גמליאל ולא מטעמי? What does that mean? אילא אם הלכה כרבן שמעון בן גמליאל דאמר אם מתה יירשנה ולאו מטעמי, which means if she passed away, he is the one who inherited her, meaning he is her heir, right? It's the French word, right? To say heir, right? Heir. Instead of H-E-I-R, right?
Right.
Anyway, the idea is that דאילו רבן שמעון בן גמליאל סבר מתנה על מה שכתוב בתורה תנאו בטל, if someone put a condition upon a Torah rules, the Torah rules over. So here is a case of a husband who said, I don't want anything from you. And if she passed away, the Torah said that he is the one who inherited her. So his statement doesn't carry a weight, because, as we said, that a person cannot override the Torah law. Now, the question is, if Rabban Shimon Gamliel hold that if someone make a condition or stipulation upon biblical text, that stipulation is void. So it's come from the school of thought that that's the reason he not inherited her, because his condition is not in effect. V'Rav savar tnao kayam, Rav hold that he is ineffective. That's based on what Rav Yudah tells us on page 56. That if someone make a condition of something that is in the Torah, when it's come to a money, that condition is ineffective. So, for example, if Rashi explained, if a person said to a woman, look, I want to betroth you, but I don't have money. So guess what? I want to betroth you without my commitment of support you, of give you what I have to by the Torah terms, like clothing, support, etc. Now, since that is a monetary commitment, according to that view, it's ineffective. But Rabban Shimon Gamliel hold, the same as Rabbi Meir, that it's void. A person cannot make those conditions. Since the Torah require a person to have a marital commitment in order to betroth her, therefore he cannot betroth her according to that view, because he goes against what the Torah instructed him. So in general, we should remember, the Meforshim explains, there is Gemara in Bava Metzia. We studied it in the past about Shomer Sachar. A person was asked to guard some property, something, and he gets paid for that. But usually, if you get paid as a guardian, if something is stolen or lost, you are obligated to pay. So that fellow said, I'll watch over, but if something happened, I'm not responsible. And he makes it as a precondition. So there is a concept, as we said, that he conditioned matne al ma shekatuv b'Torah. He is conditioning over something that the Torah instructed us. So the question is that void? It's apparently yes, because the Torah said the moment you get paid for being guardian, then anything that happened, you're responsible for that. A good case that happened in the Bet Din of Rav Spitz, is a great rabbi in Israel. He has a Bet Din, two neighbors. In Israel, most of the people live in a residential building. So a fellow on just baking a cholent for Shabbos. So he knocks the neighbor door, and he said, I just start putting all the stuff, the tomatoes and whatever it is, the potatoes, whatever, all the pieces for the cholent, the eggs. And I just turn it on. I turn it on in low level. I wanted to go in and look because I have to rush out to pick up the children, etc. So when he came back, the whole oven is gone. The whole house went smoke. Luckily, everything went fine, but that oven, which was brand new, was gone. Now he took he went to the neighbor. The neighbor said, "Look, he asked me to do it." I said, "Fine, and I know you did a lot of favors for me in exchange, etc. But I was so preoccupied and I was so busy, I forgot." So the neighbor said, "Look, it's damaged. It's cost this stove. It's cost a lot of money. It's a new one." Anyway, so the question is here: if someone claims something that is against the Torah law, the question is it have any validity? Let's say if someone sues someone in a regular court, civil court, two guys suing each other, and basically the court decided that the guy who's turned to be the winner, the other guy, the loser, need to pay all the court expenses, including the attorney that represent the one who sued him, right? According to our law, is a problem. it's a problem, because the attorney expenses that involve with plaintiff, right? It's by secular law, the court may be, the judge gets angry and he said, you rule a certain way, right? But take a case of a nudnik, right? Someone takes a lawyer and suing someone, and the other guys know that he is wrong, so he needs to take his lawyer. And now, when it's all said and done, it's expense, right? He forces you to go there. So there's a discussion, a heavy discussion among the contemporary rabbis, if two parties agree in advance that the loser will pay the other party's lawyer. If this is disputed of what is written in the Torah, as we said, matneh al ma shekatuv b'Torah, if something is written in the Torah, you cannot override that. So the Moshe Weisblum, for example, the late great sage in America, he asked the question of asmachta. What is asmachta? Asmachta, if you remember, we learned it several times. When you have a transaction between two parties, and both parties will not consent in full heart, because each party thinking that he is going to be the winner, therefore when the other party gets their part, is not considering their. We use an example of a gambling, the idea that each party, the idea that is prohibited, it's because when each one puts the money on the table, right, they have in their mind at least that I'll get the money back. If you know 100% that you're putting the $50 on certain numbers and you're going to lose them, you not do it. Right. You have an assumption, at least 1% of 100, that at least you get your money back, right? No one in the right mind is going to take, you work hard the whole day, you make $100 on the end of the day, you take the $100, you go to Ocean City or Atlantic City or Las Vegas, and you put it on the table and you lose it. No one in the right mind do that, right? You work hard all day, all week, or whatever to make those hundreds or thousands of dollars, right? So you don't losing money for fun, right? You're putting money on the table because you have the assumption that at least I get my money back. Meaning when someone else collects your fund, the rabbi said, he or she is not collecting a labor or exchange transactions between parties. They basically collecting your lost, right? So it means it was not that here I am, I'm buying these glasses, I'm paying a couple of $100 in exchange of you giving me these glasses, so I agree to pay X amount of money. You agree to sell me these glasses, and it's a transaction between two parties. The asmachta meaning you gain the loss of someone else who was not totally consent to transfer you money. So here that's the claim that Rabbi Moshe Weisblum said when it's come to these lawsuits, and even the two parties agree that the loser will pay the winner the attorney expense, it's not match the Torah law because it's considering a asmachta. Anyway, the kasavar. So even Rav hold Yerushat Abal, the inheritance of the husband in his wife's estate, is derabanan. It is a rabbinic decree. The Gemara in Tractate Bechorot, page 52b, have this big disputation, Tanaik disputation, if the husband's inheritance is a rabbinic or biblical, meaning when the wife passed away and the husband entitled or get her estate, is that rule of the Torah or rabbinic institutions. So they said, Rav hold, that the husband inherited his wife by the rabbinic ruling, וחכמים עשו חיזוק לדבריהם יותר משל תורה. And the sages make rules of their decree much severer, much serious than the Torah. So it means that the sages sometimes realize that people may be light-headed or maybe belittle their rulings because there are some people in the Jewish history that say, that's rabbis. It's not the Torah, right? So they want to strengthen their ruling and being sometimes even more stringent in their ruling Therefore, the Meiri in Bava Metzia 55b explain that they make more ruling to that. So here are examples. If Rosh Hashanah occurred on Shabbat, so Rosh Hashanah occurred on Shabbat, we do not blow the shofar on Shabbat. Mm-hmm. You see here biblical, rabbinic override biblical. If Chag HaSukkot, Festival of Sukkot, occurred on Shabbat, we do not carry the Arba'a Minim, the 4 species, on the Festival of Sukkot. You see again, rabbinic, biblical, the rabbis overrule biblical rules. And vice versa. If it's Hoshana Rabbah, the last day of the Festival of Sukkot, when we take the Hoshanot, what is called the willows, right? Mm-hmm. And we, in ancient time in the temple, it was around the Mizbeach, around the altar. So the rabbis' rules to make sure that Hoshana Rabbah never occur on Shabbat. So in that sense, so people can do that rituals of willows all the times. So you see here also the other way around, which again, the point is that the rabbis have the strength, the ability, the capability to override in order to make it strong, and they put a decree that no one can abrogate the rules that the husband inherited his wife. So it means when Rav hold the same is ruling of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, that stipulation is void, it's for different reasons. So here you see that he have a different mindset why he did it. 84, וסבר רב תנאו קיים. So Rav hold that someone who have a stipulation over money, something that is written in the Torah, is that sufficient? והיתמר. We learn how אומר לחברו, על מנת שאין לך עליי הונאה. The Torah tells us in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus 25 verse 14, when you have a transactions between two parties, you should be very careful not to cheat each other. Usually we think about the seller, but it can go both ways, which means you declare over some property in a certain value while you know that it's not that value, and vice versa. Sometimes the seller thinking about certain evaluation of something, and you know the truth, and you basically buying from him with the wrong assumptions. A good example happened to my late grandfather when he lost his father when he was a very, very young boy. If I'm not mistaken, he was 6 or 7 years old. So the late Belzer Rebbe, the great Hasidic master of Belz, the former of the former, adopted him. And he has the original book of Noam Elimelech, the original manuscript of the great-grandfather. So one of the shamosim, one of the assistants of the Rebbe, he went to my late grandfather and he saw a little boy, 8 years old in Talmud Torah, and he knew that he's poor and he's living with the Rebbe's house. So he saw this book. So he said to him, why you need this old book, rotten old book that's falling apart? I'll give you a beautiful 5 books of Moses, Chamisha Chumshei Torah, brand new, gorgeous, beautiful, and you need it for the school, so you have that. And this little naive, gullible boy agreed. Mm-hmm. So the guy took the book from him, and he gave him Chamisha Chumshei Torah. So when grandpa reached the bar mitzvah age, suddenly he realized the mistake. So he went to that fellow, and that fellow denies it at the beginning. He said that, I don't know what you're talking about. And he went to the Rebbe, the Belzer Rebbe, and according to what I heard in the family, the Belzer Rebbe fired that person from being his shamis, which means it's a huge honor in the Hasidic sect to be an assistant, to be a shamis, to such a giant Rebbe. And basically the person denies it, and then when the Rebbe said that if you deny it, you put your hand on a Sefer Torah and swear that you didn't take it from him. And he refused to do it, so the Rebbe forced him out. He says, I don't want you to be around me. But back to subject, grandpa lost. His valuable, if you take nowadays, people said, I don't know if it's true, but people said that Noam Elimelech original, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars value, lost. So the point is, when it's come to idea of cheating, it can be in both ways. It can be the seller declare a value to a buyer and he doesn't really realize the real value, and it can and it can be a total fool, and can be the other way around, like you go to a car dealership, right? They sell you a Brooklyn Bridge, not necessarily its value, right? The same happened the other way around. Someone who doesn't know, the seller doesn't know the real value of merchandise, and you convince him to sell it to you while you know the real value, okay? So
plus, he also knowingly entered into a deal with a minor that he knew.
Yes, that's another issue.
That's right, is.
So Rav Amar, yesh alav ona'ah. He said that the one who did it, he can sue him if he took more than its values. Ushmuel Amar, en lo alav ona'ah. Shmuel said in Baba Metzia 51, he doesn't have the declaration, which means, unlike the way we explained the Rav, that this condition is an effective condition. So here is a discussion among contemporary rabbis in regards to hefker. You go to a public place, let's say you go to a community mikveh, men's mikveh. You see a big sign, right guys, said there, any items that left here more than 30 days will be given to charity. Did you see those signs? It's everywhere, all the times. You see it also in some synagogues. So the question is, the Torah said that if you find a lost item, you should return it to the owner, or you declare a certain time. Is that matne al ma shekatuv b'Torah? Is this someone who put a stipulation upon something that's written in the Torah? So the response is no. When you make it nai merosh, you make it a precondition, and you said, I will not allow you to enter to this domain if you not consent to my rulings. And my ruling is that if you leave your valuables more than 30 days in this club or in this institution, it's going to be given to the charity. So therefore, it's not considering matne al ma shekatuv b'Torah.
Unless it's useful for the mikveh, in which case they'll keep it, like a towel.
Yeah. Ella. But sometimes we're dealing with valuable items that people leave, right?
Of course.
אלא ההלכה כרבן שמעון גמליאל דאמר רבתנה על מה שכתוב בתורה. תנאו בטל. Rabban Shimon Gamliel said, one who stipulates counter to that which is written in the Torah, his condition is void. Velav mitame. But it's not because of his line of reasoning. De'ilu Rabban Shimon Gamliel savar, because he hold meta yirashena, that if the wife passed away, the husband entitled to inherited her even when she was alive. He said that he's not. V'Rav savar meta lo yirashena, and Rav hold if she passed, he cannot inherit it. Why? Because he hold that the reason the husband inherited his wife is rabbinic institution, and therefore it's not the same as the Torah law. This is also impossible. Why? Ha mita'amei velo kehilchatei hu. This is for his line of reasoning, but not follow the way of halacha. Why? Because according to that, Rav accepted the assumption of Rabban Shimon Gamliel that if someone conditions something that it's contradicted the rule of Torah, even in something that involved with a monetary value, that condition is void. And he disputed it of Rabban Shimon even in that specific case. Rav, however, said the other way, that halacha is according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel in our Mishnah, but not for its own reasoning. So now the Gemara offer the third reason. Ela halacha כרבן שמעון גמליאל דאמר אם מתה יירשנה. The ruling is according to Rabban Shimon Gamliel that said that if the wife passed away, the husband inherited it, even with his conditions. ולאו מטעמי דילו, רבן שמעון גמליאל סבר בדאורייתא תנאו בטל. If something is biblical, that condition is void. הבי דרבנן, if it's rabbinic, for example, a husband entitled to מכסי מילוג, the husband entitled to a produce that come out of a tree that she owned. If the husband said, I don't want that, I let go, I don't want that, during a lifetime, Tna'o Kayam, his stipulation is valid. That's the rabbinic decree. And therefore, he is giving up his right, is acceptable. So here, the Rav Savar, Rav however hold no. Afilu b'derabanan, even something that is only quote-unquote rabbinic, Tna'o Batel, his condition against the Torah is, against the rabbinic, is not valid, it's void. Why? Because he holds that the rabbis put their decree, and in a sense it's override the Torah law. And the same way someone does that in the Torah, against the Torah law, it's void, the same applies to rabbinic law. So therefore, Rav hold that if the husband put in condition, even I don't want to derive benefit to eat any of the fruits that grow on the trees that you own, it's still void and it's not acceptable. And if we hold that way, how much so when it's come to inheritance? That this is total contradict the Torah law, because the Torah said that the husband inherited his wife and therefore is void, and that's follow Rabban Shimon Gamliel. Rashi here hold that if he the husband said the condition that he's not eating any fruits from that tree, from her tree. Tosfot disputed Rashi and said, you can't tell me that that's the rule of the Mishnah. Haiki ta'amei u'che'ilchatehu. This matched the reasoning of Rabban Shimon Gamliel. V'Rav Mosifu. So Rav add to his ruling that also, in addition, any stipulation against the rabbinic decree, such as giving up the produce. K'tzot HaChoshen, the K'tzot is a very important halachic book. So he dealing with situation that the person commanded to divided his inheritance, his estate, in a certain way, and he rules in a way that the children are not so happy with, but he ruled it in a certain way. He wanted a certain way. In one hand, you have a mitzvah lekayem divrei hamet. It's a mitzvah to fulfill the wishes of the deceased. There is a discussion in Talmud about tzara'at shchiv merah. If you have someone who's terminally ill, and how serious you have to take his signature or his statements, etc., etc. So the K'tzot HaChoshen asks a question: if someone put a certain will that not totally match the ruling in the Torah, is that considering a matne al ma shekatuv b'Torah, that one conditioned over something that is written in the Torah, and therefore tna'o batel, and therefore his reasoning, his condition is void? Especially if he gives to his heir, to his children, a inheritance, and he put it in a language of condition. If you do this, that's what's going to happen. If you do that, that is going to happen. So the K'tzot HaChoshen explains the Yerusha, the inheritance, is by Torah law. The Torah said that naturally the children inherited their father. The only point is that the heir, meaning those who inherited, they should disperse in the wishes of the father. So in reality, the Yerusha Chala, the fulfillment of the inheritance happened. And the father, in that sense, did not make condition of something that is in the Torah. The only point is, the K'tzot explained, is like the father expressed a wishes, expressed a way that he yearned to see things. But again, the children inherited regardless the wishes. Yes, you.
So they don't really have to keep it. what he wished.
We strive to keep
only,
as
only
long as
out of
it match
respect.
the Torah. If it's contradicted the Torah, then you disregarded it. Right? If the father said, I'll give you the store in condition that you're going to, for example, to do harm to my old partner, right, who betrayed me, etc., etc. So I commanded you to, to do something to his reputation or to him in order to get rid of him, etc., etc., right? Because he did so and so to me. So even that guy is not involved with that estate, but I commanded you that you inherited my store, but my condition for you to inherit my store is first to pay back to my former enemies, right? So they inherited the store regardless. And since he conditioned something that is against the Torah, they disregarded it. So the point the Ketubot said that they inherited regardless. He put some wishes, some yearning to something. If it's matched the Torah, it's fine. If it's not, how do you say it? It's not reasonable. The lawyers use this language. It's not reasonable, right? If it's not reasonable, they don't. Anyway, so the fourth explanation of the view of Rab, אלא הלכה כרבן שמעון גמליאל דאמר, אם מתה יירשנה, the halacha follow Rabban Shimon Gamliel that said that if the wife passed away, the husband inherited her even with his condition, ולאו מטעמי, אילו רבן שמעון גמליאל סבר ירושת הבעל דאורייתא, as you know, Rabban Shimon Gamliel hold that the inheritance of the husband is biblical, and therefore his stipulation is not in effect. And he said, וכל המתנה על מה שכתוב בתורה, if someone conditions something that looks like against the Torah, na'o batel, his stipulation is not effective or it's void. ורב סבר ירושת הבעל מדרבנן, Rav hold that the inheritance of the husband for his wife is rabbinic, וחכמים עשו חיזוק לדבריהם כשל תורה, and therefore the sages strengthen their view the same as biblical, and therefore you have here that you are opposing something that is rabbinic, but since the rabbis put such a strong ruling, so it's not ineffective. Rav Savar, Yerushat Abal Midrabanan, is that true that Rav hold that the inheritance of the husband is by rabbinic law? Ve'atnan. Now we zoom in the Mishnah, as we said, in Tractate Bechorot, page 52b. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer, Hayoreshet ishto, if someone inherited his wife, yachzir livnei mishpacha, he should return the estate to her family members in a jubilee. The Torah tells us that, this is Leviticus 25 verse 10, that all the estate in Eretz Israel that was giving as a gift or sold, after 49 years, the Jubilee year, they return to their original owner. So here is a case that he inherited his wife, so in order to reach the Jubilee year, he needs to return it to her family, v'inakeh lahem min adamin, which means those estate that he purchased with a low price, he need to reduce that from the final, Rashi explained, from the final point, which is a person purchases estate, and that estate gets very cheap, and the estate changed its values, and years pass by. So this part of that calculation need to be taken care of. Ve'havinan ba, and we challenge that. Mai kasavar, what exactly Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka holds? Kasavar, if he holds Yerushat Ba'al Deoraita, the inheritance of the husband is biblical, Amay Yachzir, why the husband required to return the estate that he inherited to the wife's family? Why? Because this Yerusha, this inheritance is not returned to the owner at the year of Jubilee. And if you hold the Rabbanan, if you hold that it's rabbinic, and therefore he need to do it just by the rabbinic law, which not override the Torah. They ask a question, Damim mai avidetaihu. So what's the money has to do with that? What's the idea, the notion that the husband need to return the estate in a jubilee year without getting anything in exchange? ואמר רב respond לעולם כסבר ירושת הבעל דאורייתא. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka hold the inheritance of the husband is biblical. וכגון, this is applied to a certain circumstance, שהיא אשתו בית הקברות. She owns from her family a cemetery. And nowadays we know that this can be a very expensive, right? A site that they bought with all the licensing belonged to the family, and she inherited to her husband. So they said mishum b'gam mishpacha, which means here you have some type of embarrassing because this is like a solely for the family, and it's a very serious discussion among the poskim, among the rabbis, how you treated this type of situation. They start the point of departure of Tosfot here. Tosfot asks, if the wife left for her husband a cemetery that belongs to her family, so what this has to do with the jubilee? So they said, if it's not, Tosfot explained, if it's not returned to the family, it is an embarrassment to a family that is like departed from them after so many generations. And the Rivach said that you cannot make a retroactive act, which means, let's say if it's a family feud, and he purposely occupied and filled up the cemetery with strangers. So it's a right? It's a problem. So it's a discussion among the poskim, among the rabbis, if someone married to a woman that she's prohibited to him. He's not allowed to marry her, right? And by the Torah law. So, in a way, they're living in a sin, right? Now, he passed away, and she bought a plot next to him. And the children comes from the first marriage, which unfortunately in our cemetery happened twice, in two cases, in my 13 years tenure. Children come from the first marriage and they said, this is a huge embarrassment for us. What the daddy did, it was wrong, and the fact that she wants to be buried next to him, we will not accept that, right? And it turned to be a big, emotional, terrible thing. So Moshe Sternbuch, the great South African rabbi, who's now in Har Nof in Israel, he wrote in his book that the children has the right and they can delay the funeral if they wish to have a burial. We have once here another very similar case of woman that married 3 times and she have children from each of the husbands. And basically the children from the first husband buried her next to the first husband. The children of the second husband said that mom wished to be buried next to our father. And the daughter from the third one said, no, she divorced from first and the second husband. She wants to be buried next to the father. And then the worst part was that she have some friends that came in and said, show a document that she signed, and she said she wants to be buried next to her mother. And all of those burial site was in our cemetery. And what happened is she was already buried next to her first husband. And to make it worse, most of these people are attorneys. So I found, after consulting with many colleagues in Israel, a Chatam Sofer, the great rabbi in Hungary, that he has a case like that in his cemetery. And he find a way, even usually you don't open graves, right? You open graves only if someone transferred to Israel or if it's a swastika and anti-Jewish sentiment. In general, you don't open graves. But he hold in a very similar case to do that. So based on that Chatam Sofer, we transfer her body from the first husband to next to her mother. But then Michael come and ask me, the guy in charge in the cemetery, how to treat the expense with that. And to make long story short, we swallowed the expense, meaning the cemetery fund, because we didn't want to litigate with all these attorneys, the children from all these different husbands, right? Some of them are members, some of them are not. Anyway, we didn't want to go to that notion for digging grave. Digging grave is about, Mike said, it's about $800. So we figure out, we'll swallow it. Anyway.
So you got to go by the last wishes that she made.
I wish that it's so simple. I wish that it's so simple because, as we said, Rav Sternbuch hold that if they live in a sin, meaning that they living husband and wife against Torah law, and the children from the previous marriage claimed that what father did was embarrassment and they want him to be buried next to their mother, even he divorced her,
maybe no get.
It's not so simple. There is a notion to what you said. There's a book called Gesher HaChaim from Rav Turkochinsky. And in that book, you have a discussion that there's a lot of sources, mainly in the Kabbalah literature, but it's other sources that say that you do not bury two enemies, one next to another, because if the enemy is during the lifetime, they remain the spirit. But the thing is, Rav Sternbuch rules that they should transfer next to the, because even he divorced his wife, right? But he lived with her in according to halacha versus the second one. Anyway, so they said, Amur Rabbanan, Lishkol Dmei Veli Hadar. The husband will take the payment and return the estate. Uma Yenakela Min Adamim. What does that mean by the ruling that he should reduce from that payment? They said, Dmei Kever Ishto, the burial expenses of his wife, since the husband is obligated to bury his wife, what we study on page 46b, so he cannot claim payment for the burial, which means when he returned the estate, the burial estate, he received payment for the entire estate, excluding the value of his wife's burial site. So Rav brought a proof to that if someone purchased a family cemetery, even it was according to halacha, he needs to return it. Kedetanya, hamocher kivro. If someone sells the burial site that was saved for him in the family estate, v'derech kivro, sometimes there is a path, there is a special aisle that leads to a certain graves, alright? So, ma'amado, umekom espedo, or a special chapel that they doing eulogies, ba'im bnei mishpacha v'kovrim oto ba'al korcho. The family members can come there even against the will of the purchaser and bury there. Meaning the sages put an institution that the family members can buying back the cemetery and return the money to the buyer. Again, mishum pgam mishpacha, because this is the harm thank you, to the family's name if a member of the family had to be buried in the graveyard of strangers. So you see here that Rav believes that the inheritance of a husband is by the Torah law in total contract to what the Gemara said earlier. Rav leta'amei de Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka kama velei lo svira lei. But he explained the reasoning, the view of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, but he himself will not hold that view, but he hold that the husband inherited his wife by the rabbinic law. Okay, so now it is a discussion among the poskim, the contemporary rabbis, if someone purchased 3 plots. In our cemetery is very reasonable, the prices, especially for members. So someone bought a plot for himself, for his wife, and for his son. Then they get divorced and he moved away. So he basically have a contract with the cemetery, And he said they gave him back the money for his part, move out west. And now, because, unfortunately, when people get divorced, sometimes there's a lot of feuds and paying back and issues like that. He wanted her plot back to him. The issue is that since it was written on her name, so some rabbis hold that it's her. But here you see how it's interconnected, especially if, and we have another case here or something like that, that the husband divorced his wife, he lived with the sin with another woman, and he bought a plot, many plots to be an extra for the family, and the second wife want to be buried next to her husband, even they live in a sin. So it wasn't so, it was a very painful case. Anyway, in one case we have a husband that passed away, and the wife during her lifetime, she wants to be the second wife, she wants to have her name written on his monument as his wife. Not just to get the burial next to him, but to be written her name and only her children from the second marriage on his monument. Anyway, I was in a sense reconciliation between the children, because the first wife's children were very hurt, right? Anyway, Mishemet, the Mishnah said, if someone passed away, והניח אישה ובעל חוב ויורשים, this fellow died, but he left a lot of issues. Meaning, he left estate, but the estate, it's not big enough to satisfy everyone. So the wife, she declare the right, because she have the Ketubah, the marriage contract, she wants to collect the estate. The creditor said that he owed them, and they want to collect the estate. The heir, meaning the children, wants to inherit the estate without paying the creditor what they own. And this fellow had פיקדון או מלווה ביד אחרים, and he has had a deposit or a loan in the possessions of others. So, in general, we have a rules we're going to study on page 92, that something that the orphans inherited, it's not, they inherited independently, it's not subjugated to the creditor, unlike land. So here, if he left the land, is not the question. So land, so whoever come first, get it. And the Rambam explained that the heir cannot inherit anything as long as he doesn't pay the what he owes. But when it's come to a movable object, what they have, this is something you cannot take from them. Rabbi Dr אומר, ינתנו לכושל שבהם. Later the Gemara explain what does that mean, but in general, Rabbi Dr hold that you give to one who was pressed for fun, one who's in need of money, the most of all of them. Later we see who is that person. Is that the wife? Is that others? Rabbi Akiva אומר, אין מרחמים בדין. Rabbi Akiva said, one is not merciful in judgment. If the halacha is that it belongs to one party, one follows the halacha and leaves aside considerations of mercy. אלא יינתנו ליורשים. The reason that it gives to the heir, to the one who inherited, שכולן, the wife and those creditors, צריכים שבועה. In order for them to collect what they entitle, they need to take a oath. ואין היורשים צריכים שבועה, but the heirs do not require to take an oath. So they therefore have more absolute right than the others to their fathers property. הניח פירות תלושים מן הקרקע. If the person left a produce that is detached from the ground, which means that's a movable object and it's not neither by others nor by the orphans. So here the Meiri explained that it's like they are in a different location, meaning the father, for example, collected them, put it in a big boxes, and he passed away. So now it's neither others nor children there. So he said, Kol hakodem bahem zacha, meaning anyone who comes first, he get them. So if the heir, the children come first, they get that. If the wife or the creditor came first, they collected it. Zachta isha yoter miktubta. If the wife acquired the produce and it was worth more than the payment of her marriage contract, ubal chov yoter al chovo, or the creditor acquired this produce and it's worth more than the value of this debt, right? You have a Rolex, right? You sell it on eBay. You're expecting X amount, you're expecting 5,000, you get 8,000, right? And the person owe you 5,000. You collect the Rolex because it's 5,000. You sold it to 3,000 more than its values. So they said hamotar, but left over in that money. Rabbi Tarfon omer yinatnu lakoshel shebahem. Rabbi Tarfon said, give it to the weakest of them, which means either the creditor or the wife, depending on the circumstances. Rabbi Akiva omer, Rabbi Akiva disputed and said again, ein merachamim badin. One is not merciful in judgment. Ela yinatnu la yorshim. You have to give it to the heir. Why? שכולם צריכים שבועה ואין היורשים צריכים שבועה. Because every one of them need to take an oath before they collect their debt, versus the heir, by halacha, did not require to take an oath. So the Rosh and the Ritva, bringing the Yerushalmi, that said that you have to differentiate between a widow and a creditor to those heirs, to the children. Why? Because when it's come to, for example, the creditor is mikanu lehaba, from now and onward, he just go by the current value and the future value. The heir, the children, by Torah law, automatic, the second the father is not breathing anymore, is no longer among the living, they have it. So therefore it's all there. There is a famous responsa of the great rabbi in Czechoslovakia, Rabbi Landau, who wrote the book Nodab Yehuda. He asked a question about Erev Pesach, a liquor, huge liquor manufacturer. The person was not religious, so he did not sold his chametz before Pesach, and he owns this huge manufacturer of liquor. He passed away half an hour before Pesach. Now, by halacha, any chametz she'avar alav Pesach, right, Elliot? Any chametz that passed Passover, you no longer have an access to that. If you didn't sell it, it's no longer yours. Now the heir, the children came in and they said, do you have any right over this company? So Nodab Yehuda argued and he said, you do not find the children because of the sin or mistakes of the father. If the father was alive, we put a knas, we punish him, right? But the children inherited it because they inherited. Nowadays, there are many geonim, many rabbis. They say that when it's come to collect metaltalim, a movable object, I give you an example. A father left a lottery ticket. He bought a lottery ticket, and it's in his drawer, and he passed away. The children opened the drawer and saw the lottery ticket. They went, and sure enough, it's worth a lot of money. Now, he also owed money to different creditors. So the question is, do you have the creditors access to that winning of the lottery, since the father purchased the ticket, or the children receive it and it's there? The argue is their mazel? Is Hashem inherited to them? Is them, or is the father? So there is a Maharshadam. Maharshadam is one of the great poskim. He hold you have to differentiate between movable objects and between collectors. For example, in the case that they ask him about money for shidduch, money that they owe the matchmaker in those days, he said that he can collect it. But in general, the claim is, when it's come to that it's like is the good luck of the children. It's not the father's luck, because the one who basically access and win it is the children. Anyway, so you see, it's all based on here. So the Gemara asks in the first circumstance the Mishnah, Lama lemitne milveh, lama lemitne pikadon. What's the reason the Mishnah used the term of loan or deposit? The Mishnah should use only one situation, one example, and we understand by ourselves how we treat the others. So the Gemara said, tzricha. We need to teach us the disputation between Rabbi Dr and Rabbi Akiva in regards to two circumstances that we never know the result just by knowing one. The itana milve, if the Tana in the Mishnah teaches only in a situation of a loan, we may enter to our mind and think, Behaka amar Rabbi Tarfon, mishum de milve lehotzaa nitna. When someone taking a loan, what's the purpose? He need to spend it. So when the father loaned the money, he have in his mind that the borrower will not keep the money in his pocket, but to disperses whatever investment he have, and then later on he pay him back from a different money. Meaning, all the money that the borrower have at the time of passing of the lender, it's not considering the money of the heir. Why? Because you still need to collect the debt, and only after the collection of the debt, then they became the owner of the leftover cash, money. So for that reason, Rabbi Tarfon hold that the money is not considering as a state of the heir, and you can collect it to other claimee. So there's a Kovetz Yurim, it's a contemporary rabbi, ask a question. If someone give pikadon, give a deposit to someone else, so according to Rabbi Tarfon, why you give it to the wicked? Why you give it to the kosher? You need to give it to the heir. So Moshe Sternbuch, again, the great rabbi of South Africa, who was now living in Harnof, Moshe Sternbuch said that you have a guard who guard money, meaning someone you give the money and he is someone that you trust and you keep it, and then the person's passed away, so he is torn between what to do with that money. He doesn't know to what child or heir he should give and how you should. So he basically goes before the Bet Din, and the Bet Din needs to rule how to continue treating that money, because he basically guard that money only for the period that the person's alive. He wasn't instructed to give it to someone of the children, and therefore he needs to go to the Bet Din, and the rule here now is noten la koshel shebahem. We give it to one who is the most pressed for fun, the most in a great need. Aval pikadon, but in regards to deposit, the eite be'enei, which means it's remained the same value. It's not changed by its value. He just put it for him to guard, right? Eima modele le Rabbi Akiva, that he agreed with Rabbi Akiva that the heir get it because anyway that pikadon, that deposit is there, and it's considering as part of the state of the orphan, because he hold it for them as a deposit. It's a famous story in the Gemara we study about a great Rabbi Hanina, that one time someone left a chicken outside of his doors, and his wife noticed that. So he said to her, it's not ours. So meanwhile he put it in his yard, and that chicken brought other, until it was a huge mess of so much chickens, etc., around their estate. So when it's a long time, and meanwhile he doesn't allow his wife, Rabbi Hanina, to touch anything, you see that it's impossible to keep them. So he sold them in those days to a goat, and those goats again grow. And sure enough, one day it was really hard for him to keep it, so he prayed. And the Gemara said that all of a sudden he hears someone talking, several years ago, I don't remember where, but I left chickens, and I don't know where they are. So he come and he showed him, and he explained to him, and the guy took all the goats, he didn't give him anything, and he kept it for him for years. And Rabbi Hanina said, that's the rule it should be done, that you treated Yehi mamon chavercha. We just studied it in the Pirkei Avot, chapter 2. You should treat the money that belongs to someone else as you wish that your money treated by others, which means the way that you treated your own money, you should treat money that belongs to other people. Anyway, ve'i tanaha, if this Tana teaches the disputation only in a situation to a deposit, I may say beha kama Rabbi Akiva. This is what Rabbi Akiva said, that the heir receive it because it's considering in their estate, in their orphan's estate. Aval behach, in the case of a loan, Eima Modei, I may say that he agree with Le Rabbi Tarfon, that the heir will not receive it because that money of the loan was given to disperse it, to do expense, to do what they need for investment, so therefore now we understand why the Tana needs to bring a disputation in two different cases. Maila kosher. You remember that we said in the Mishna, the Rabbi Tarfon hold, you give the money, the leftover, to whom? To one who is a wicked, meaning the one who is pressed for fun the most. So it's a two explanation. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Hanina Omer, la kosher shebereiyah. He hold that the one who's meaning either the widow or the one who's dead, is considering someone who see the last, which means that he doesn't have the ability to collect from that estate because it was long ago. Rabbi Yochanan Omer lektubat haisha. So the first one said that the one who's the latest day of the document attesting to the death. So his document is the weakest, as one can collect from the property that was sold by the deceased only if it was sold subsequent to his incurring the death. So as a result, the others can collect the property that has been sold before the date listed in the document. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Liktubat isha mishum china." So that's it's the marriage contract with the wife. Why? Because you want to avoid fear, to avoid those women to have a fear that they will not be able. That women see that they will not be able to collect the Ketubah, so they are thinking twice before they get married. So therefore, she is considering the one that is the weakest among those who follow claim. You see a similar disputation early, Ketanai. Rabbi Binyamin Omer, La Kushel Shebiriyah. He says that this is given to the weakest of the Vu Kasher. So the one that either kashur or kosher, that someone who is the weakest one. And Rabbi Lazar Omer lektubat isha mishum china, the same notion that that's part of the favor. Hiniach perot atlushin. If a person left detach a produce So we said whoever comes first will collect. And we explained that Rabbi Tarfon said it should be to the weakest one. Rabbi Akiva said you should not show mercy in judgment, but you should only give to the heir. Rabbi Akiva ma'irya motar. So the question is, according to Rabbi Akiva, why discuss specifically this case of surplus, which means that what left over? Kulu nami diroshim abu. All the produce, which means not only the leftover, it should give to the heir. So the Gemara said, "En achinami," it is true. Ve'aide amar Rabbi Tarfon motar. By the way, that Rabbi Tarfon said in regards to the surplus, that in response, Tana'i huname motar. So he taught also the leftover. So it means it was, in a way, by the way, also, we teach also the leftover. 4b, Rabbi Akiva tfisa lo mehanya klal. So the Gemara asks, according to Rabbi Akiva, let's wait and think. If you are seizing the property, which means you as a one who he owns fund, Reuven borrow from institution, let's call it Shimon for our understanding, fund. Now you have Shimon seize on Reuven assets. How? He, as a creditor, he put his hand on that. So now you say that this is putting the hand seizure on the debtor assets. It's not collectible. Why? If you tell me that Rabbi Akiva disputed Rabbi Tarfon not only in regard to surplus, but also on the other estate that left in the debt, which means that if the creditor came earlier and they collected, you take it from them and bring it to the heir. Again, you have Reuven, and this guy Reuven owes Bank A, Mr. B, Mrs. C, etc. Right? And Reuven left 2 sons. Now, Bank A went before his children and put their hands on the estate. And Mr. A and Mrs. B put their hands on the estate. What we said so far, that even those institutions came in and hold it, we pull it out of their hands, and what we're going to do, we're going to give it to the heir, to the children. Do you find any circumstance that seizing by the collector, meaning those lending institution, it's still in effect? That's the way Rashi take this statement. Tosfot, however, ask that the Gemara here basically asks us a question. And the question is, we learn early in the Mishnah, page 80b, in regards to Shomeret Yavam. You have a woman, let's call her Leah, she married Reuven, Reuven passed away, and she's waiting for his brother, since they have no children, to marry her. So it's called Shomeret Yavam. So if she went ahead and she collect estate from her husband in order to pay off the marriage contract, the Ketubah agreement between them, she entitled to them. Which means, do you mean to say that Rabbi Akiva disputed the general statement in a Mishnah? That's the way Tosfot and Tosfot Chance explain. The Ritva asked here a different way. He said the language, the style of the Gemara by this question is different. The Gemara will ask simply, you see a contradiction between the two Mishnayot. So the Gemara respond, Amar Rava, Amar Rav Nachman, even according to Rabbi Akiva, seizing the debtor assets by the creditor, it's effective. But here is the condition. Vehu shetafas mechayim, which means you do that one sees the property assets is effective It happened when the debtor he was alive. So if you collected the debt when the father is alive, so you hold it as some type of collateral to pay the debt even after the father passing. The Rashi and Rivan said that that's the way Rav Nachman received from his teacher, that Rabbi Akiva agreed in this type of situation. And we learn in Tractate Adayot, the first parak, the Mishnah Gimel, the third Mishnah, said a person is obligated to refer what he learned from his Rebbe, the language is Rebbe, the way that Rebbe said. So the reason that when you are ceasing to collect this while the person is alive versus when he passed, it means that when you put it in alive, it's not that you're going after the orphan, the children who lost their father. And therefore, even after passing, the Pnei Yoshua said, he is not obligated to take an oath. So therefore, he basically different than the regular heir versus when you have a case after passing between all the collectors that need to take an oath versus the orphan. So Tosfot explained that that's the idea, that the moment he passed is in his hand. But Tosfot said that applies specifically to Baal Chov, someone who's the collector, but not in the case of Ketubah. Tosfot, if you read the whole nuances at the very end, he concluded, regardless if it's a Ketubah or mezonot, mashe tafsa, tafsa, whatever it's collected, well, Rabbi Tarfon. According to Rabbi Tarfon, that hold that the widow or the debtor can collect fruits after the passing of the father, the manchei heicha, where are the produce in the time of the father's passing, that you said that they will not entitle, the heir will not entitle, and therefore this season is effective. So the Gemara said, Rav u'Shmuel, the Amrei Travaihu, that both Rav and Shmuel hold, what Rabbi Tarfon told us is apply in a situation, Tetzvurim, Umunachin, Birshut Harabim. That guess what? That happened when it's the pile and the places is in a public domain. Since the public domain is not a suitable location for an act of acquisition, anyone can take produce and acquire those produce. They said, Aval, meaning Kol HaKodem Zoche, Aval besimta. Yet, if they are in a simta, it's alley, which means a place that it's connected somehow to public domain, but it's not used frequently by public, law, which means basically everyone can make the kinyan there. So meaning that in that location, that alley, the frequency of people is only Shat Adchak, time of third great need. So you cannot treat it as a regular Reshut Arabim, as a regular public domain. So therefore, even one who holds that the regular acquisition of Meshicha, meaning holding from one another, isn't taking effect when it's a public domain, he agreed that it's an effect in the alley, because everyone has the right to use that alley as his private domain, and that's what the Gemara said in Bava Batra, page 84 and 76. So therefore, Rashi explained, you cannot treat those alleys as a regular Reshut Arabim, as a regular public domain. So even though the Shev Shmaitze explained in chapter 4, he says, even though the one who holds it has the right to use that alley, but anyway, since the produce is under the auspicism, under the domain of what? Of the orphans, and now they are still in a place that they have some domain rights, so we treated it like it's there. That's the Shel Shmaitze. So the Rabbi Yochanan, this is the view that disputed that. The Rabbi Yochanan beResh Lakish the Amri Travayu. The both Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish hold that what Rabbi Tarfon said, afilu besimta, even those produce, the time of passing of the father was in the alley. So therefore, kol hakodem zoche, which means even you see in Gemara Bava Basra 84 that Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish differentiate between an alley to a regular public domain in regards to maaseh kinyan in the matter of transactions in utensil of the buyer, but it doesn't hold that this differentiation is enough to entitle the heir in that property. So it means that those produce that are carries in that alley, it's not considering as something that it's in a domain of the orphan, and therefore Kol hakodem zacha, you have the tfisa, the seasoning on them, it's taking effect. So here, in order to clarify this, the Gemara brings us a story of movable objects after the passing of the lender. Vedun dayanei, someone hold a movable estate after the passing of the lender, and therefore the judges who judge a case of this kind, ke Rabbi Tarfon, they follow the way of Rabbi Tarfon, which means they allow the borrower to hold it. Ve'ahadrei Reish Lakish le'uvda minayu. Reish Lakish came in and he turned around the opposite way, which means he dismissed the judge's decisions and restored the money to the heirs. Follow Rabbi Akiva. So Amar le Rabbi Yochanan, Asita keshel Torah. So Rabbi Yochanan said to him, you acted in a case like this, like one acts in regard to ruling of Torah law, which means any incorrect action taken by the court must be corrected. So he basically said, okay, you have lechatchila and you have diavad after the fact. Since the rule follow Rabbi Tarfon, so why you reverse it? Leima beha kamiflige. You may say that disputation is as follows. The Mar Savar, the Reish Lakish hold, if the judge made a mistake, ta'a bidvar Mishnah chozer. If he make an error in a matter of appeared in a Mishnah, the decision is revoked. So therefore, he revoked the rule of the judges that they rule in opposite the ruling of Rabbi Akiva when Rabbi Akiva disputed his fellow. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 33, said that when a judge made a mistake in something that is written unequivocally in the Mishnah, or even a hearing of Amoraim that we know that's a halacha, you have to reverse it. But not, you see, Rashi said that in the Tractate Eruvin, we study page 46b, we learn Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Zreika Amru, they both say, Halacha ke Rabbi Akiva mechavero, meaning any time that Rabbi Akiva disputed his colleague, not more than one sage, it's not Mishnah, but this is halacha, and we treat it like Mishnah. So the Gemara said, Umar Savar Rabbi Yochanan hold, Ta'a bidvar Mishnah eno chozer. Rabbi Yochanan said that the idea of reversing, revoking, it's only if it's clearly dvar Mishnah. However, if it's only hearing from the Amoraim, even his count on the Mishnah is not the reason to reverse it, to revoke it. So the Gemara rejected this notion of the explanation of their disputations. The Gemara said, "Lo, they not disputed from this point. Bekule alma ta'a bidvar Mishnah chozer." Everyone agreed that where the judge err in the matter of appear in the Mishnah, the decision is revoked. V'hacha b'maka mifligei, but here they disagree for what? Mar Savar Rabbi Yochanan said that this ruling halacha ki Rabbi Akiva mechavero velo merabo, which means for his colleague, yes, but here, since Rabbi Tarfon was the teacher of Rabbi Akiva, so if a judge ruled the same as Rabbi Tarfon, it stays. So the Ritva explains, since his ruling not contradicted a general principle that was well accepted, this mistake is considering maybe a ta'ud b'shikul hadat, his decisions was mistaken. But as far as the ruling is not revoked. There is another way that the Shita Mekubetzet explains, and he said, Rabbi Yochanan hold that the principle is that you do not ein halacha ki Rabbi Akiva. You don't follow the ruling of Rabbi Akiva when he disputed against his teacher. So therefore, Reish Lakish man asita keshel Torah, which means asita the rule of Rabbi Akiva, that it's like the halacha follow him, but the truth is incorrect because halacha is not according to him. Umar Savar and Reish Lakish hold halacha, the halacha is always follow Rabbi Akiva when he disputed individual, afilu merabo, even in his disputes is with teacher. So therefore, he said that if a dayan, a judge, rules as Rabbi Tarfon, we have to revoke that decision. Ve'i ba'it ema. There is another option to understand the disputation between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. The kule almad, according to everyone, halacha ki Rabbi Akiva mechaveiro. That the halacha follow according to Rabbi Akiva's opinion in his dispute of his colleagues, but not against his teacher. V'hacha behaka miflegei, and here the disputation is as follows: Mar Savar Rabbi Yochanan hold Rabbi Tarfon Rabo Ava. Rabbi Tarfon was the teacher of Rabbi Akiva. Umar Savar and Reish Lakish hold that Rabbi Tarfon Chaveiro Ava, that Rabbi Tarfon was his colleague. So if he was colleague, so it's a different story. So the rabbi said, based on the Gemara in Menachot 68b, that even Rabbi Akiva treated Rabbi Tarfon as his teacher, but it wasn't his real direct teacher. It was, which we call in Talmud in several places, Talmid Chaver, some type of colleague teacher, sort of, which means that someone is equal in wisdom to him, but he learned from him as one thing, like Marin Eruvin 63 give examples. The third explanation of this disputation, the kule alma chaveiro ava, that everyone's agreed that Rabbi Tarfon was his colleague of Rabbi Akiva in regards to the principle when Rabbi Akiva disputed with him. V'hacha beha kamifligei, here they disputed. Mar Savar Reish Lakish hol halacha itmar, Umar Savar Rabbi Yochanan hold matin itmar. So Rabbi Yochanan hold that one is inclined to follow the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. So even Rabbi Akiva views follow lechatchila, the halacha was never established conclusively in that way. So if judges went against the principle that halacha follow Rabbi Akiva in opposition to his colleague, the sages do not revoke their decisions. You see here a few views. You have Rashi and you have other views. That if someone come and ask a question lechatchila, the way you should follow Rabbi Akiva. But b'diavad, after the fact, if those movable objects, the mitaltelim, reach the Baal Chov, the debt collector, he did not have the obligation to give it to the heir. That's the way Shita Mekubetzet Maram Shif hold. It's a discussion among the past generation. The Gdolei Galicia was a great luminary rabbis in the Galicia, in Eastern Europe. They asked a question. People carry Kupat Rabbi Meir Balanes. It was a special tzedakah box that was carried in Galicia by people. Now, someone asked a question. There is a new charity need. Someone needs charity. Can you open that box that dedicated to one location and use it for charity or something else? So the few Gedolim at that generation, like Ma'amar Mordechai, like Beit Yitzchak, few other luminary rabbis, said you cannot relocate money that is dedicated to tzedakah in a certain way, in a certain box. The whole is the same as the law of Chatzer, which means something that it's thrown in a domain of someone, and it's in that person's domain, so therefore, in a sense, it's like belong already to those causes, and therefore cannot use it. The same manner of question come up with a payphone. You use a payphone, or you see those machines that selling sweets or selling soda and things like that. You open the machine, boom, tons of money come to your hands, right? So do you have kinyan chatzer in that sense, which means that the owner of that machine hold it from the purpose of kinyan chatzer, that it's already his, or not? If you remember several days ago, we asked about electricians that came and fixed the main box in the building, and all of a sudden find a lot of money there. Mm-hmm. And it's the same question. So here, the diyun among the poskim, the big discussion, if you have din shel kinyan chatzer or not. Another case of holding metaltalin from the estate of the deceased, they said krevei de Rabbi Yochanan, relatives of Rabbi Yochanan, tafus para deyat mei. So they hold seized a cow of orphan from the alley, because the orphan's father owed them money, and it was in that simta. Atu lekamei de Rabbi Yochanan, amar lahu shapir tfastua. It's good that you hold it. So even later you see in the conclusion of the Gemara that Rabbi Yochanan holds that at the first place, lechatchila, you should follow Rabbi Akiva, that prohibited this type of seasoning. But here in our case, since they already hold the cow, it's considering the avad. That's the way it was fought, and they can hold it. They can hold it. They follow Rabbi Tarfon. Atu lekamei de Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. So since they are relative of Rabbi Yochanan, so he is pasul, he is not the one who can hold the court for them. So therefore, they come before Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Amar lehu zilu ahadu. Go and return the cow, because halacha follows Rabbi Akiva, that hold that you holding this cow, it's ineffective. Atu lekamei de Rabbi Yochanan. They came back to Rabbi Yochanan, and they give him the ruling of Reish Lakish. Amar lehu, Rabbi Yochanan said to his relative, Ma e'aseh lachem, what should I do to you? Shekenegdi chaluk alai, which means someone in my value, in my level, disputed me, so I cannot dispute it to him. So I'm basically, that's what we said, I'm backing out my decision, and I'm going by the Reish Lakish. Now, Birkat Av, it's a book. He elaborates on this sugya a lot. You see it also in the Avetz, that in a way he said, you cannot depend on me since I'm a relative of you, so you have to return it. Third story, Ahu Bakara Diatmei. It was a certain herdsman carrying the cattle, the Tafsei Torah, that he carries those cattle of the orphans, that from whom a creditor sees an ox of payment for debt of the orphan's father. Baal Chov Amar Mechayim Tafisna la. I did it when the father was still alive. So even Rabbi Akiva holds that if you do it at the time of the one who love, one who's the borrower, so it's an effective. Uvakara Amar, no. And the one who is in charge of the animals, he said, no, Lachar Mitat Tavsei. He did it after the father passed away. Atulekamei de Rav Nachman, Omar lei itlach sahade de Tavsei. Do you have a witness that this debt collector hold the ox? Amar lei lav. I don't have it. Amar lei migo de achol omar lakuach biyadi. Since you have here Tanat Migo, he can come to us and said, this debt collector will say, I got it from what? From the father of the orphans. And we can count, he will be trustworthy in that claim. Yachol namele meimar, he can go ahead and say, Mechayim dafasni lei. The same way he can say, I did it while he was alive. And we have to take its face value, his claim. Because what is the idea of Migo? If someone has a claim, and he can bring another proof that's much stronger than that, so since he used one proof, we basically take it as is. So in our case, if that lender claimed that he purchased the animal from their father, and we can take his word for that, because holding an item is considering that you own, but the idea that he did it while he was alive is not. Why? Because mamona bechezkat marei. We have the assumption that the money is in the domain of the father, that he was the Rosh said, the original owner. So basically, the Ketzot HaChoshen explained in 64 and 72 that that's the whole claim of Migo, that he claimed that he bought this animal from the father. But if you have a witness that saw that he collected that animal, so you cannot say that he take it from its owner, because it's well known that he took it against the will, and therefore he doesn't have a Migo, and is not trustworthy that he did it to the life of the father, and that's the way Tosfot and Tosfot HaRosh hold. The Rashba elaborates on that, and he said that the whole Bakar, the whole person, he basically, when it's all said and done, he needs to pay as a Shomer Sachar, as someone who watch over a state, that if something is stolen, he is responsible. So that's the reason why he is involved in that claim. So therefore, it's not a claim. Anyway, Ve'amar Reish Lakish said that what Hagodrot, that moving livestock, which means you take a sheep, you take an oxen, that they run by themselves, Ein lahen chazaka, they have no presumptions of ownership to whoever is in possession to them. So therefore the person doesn't have a migo. So the Ritva and others ask a question, so why you don't ask the shepherd to take an oath? So he explained that if he stole it before the owner passed away, he is always have a fear that he will be caught, or they blame him that he didn't supervise properly, and therefore he is not good, he is pasul le'edut, he is not acceptable for any manner of witness. So the Gemara said, Shanei Torah, the ox, it's a different story. Why? Because they said Msira lero'eh, that was given to a shepherd who does not let it wander off. So as a result, possession of an ox does establish a presumption of ownership. Now we're going to the fourth situation. So just another case of the derivative from here. Sometimes there is a babysitter. You hire a babysitter to watch over children. So imagine she is in charge for a large house or large apartment. And what happened while she was watching the children, a thief came and stole things from the house. So imagine the babysitter locked the house, took the children to the basement, she's playing with them. A thief came from the roof, was gehert. The thief came from the roof and he stole things. So you tell me that she's responsible or not responsible? She was watching the children. Now the owner said, I'm not going to pay her for hours of being a babysitter. He has the right to say it. He has the right to hold her responsible for that. It's a discussion among the rabbis. Last part for this shiur is a fourth story. The Vei Nesi'ah, people from, some say that it's the second Rabbi Yehuda Nesi'ah, Tafus amta deyatmei misimta. They hold a maidservant of orphan in the alley as payment for a debt owed to them by the orphan's father. Yativ Rabbi Abahu ורבי חנינא בר פפי ורבי יצחק נפחא ויתיב Rabbi Abba Gabayu. Amar lehu, the three judges said, the people of the Nasi, Shapir Tfastua. You did right by having her. Why? Because they said even in most of the time in it's come to a Torah law, we treated the slaves the same as land in regards to collection of the estate of the orphan. The Gemara concluded in Baba Batra, page 128, that it's considering as a movable object. So therefore, the creditor, the one who lent the money, can go and have them and own them based on what Rabbi Tarfon said on the Mishna. That's the way Tosfot and Ritva hold the reason for that. So the Ktsot HaChoshen explained in 39 that that's part of the setup that they have, especially think in those days. Amar lu Rabbi Abba mishum devei nesi aninu mechanfit lehu. Just because they are the house of the prince of the Nasi, you will curry favor with them by rendering an incorrect verdict. Isn't it the halacha that there were judges, v'hadun dayane Rabbi Tarfon, v'had Reish Lakish uvad Aminayu. So it means you have the obligation to return the sermon. Now, it was a case not long ago in Yerushalayim. Was two guys who were fighting over ownership of a car, used car. So one guy gets so angry, guess what he did? He forcefully took the car and he drove the car to a spot, like a separate spot. He locked up the car, he took out the keys, and goodbye. Neither one of us is going to use it. So it was a discussion among the rabbis. It's just because he have now the keys, and just because he put it in his domain, you hold it as him, as owner, or you say that you have it like an agudrot, en lahem chazaka. So how you treat it? Yesh or en lahem chazaka. So again, we'll continue Mitzvah Shem tomorrow.